Welcome to Carolina Catholic Media Spotlight, where we take a fresh look at the people, places, issues, and events that impact your faith every day.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Carolina Catholic Media Spotlight. My name is Jason Murphy, host of the Obligation Radio Show here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. We are coming to you from the studio of Carolina Catholic Media on North Tryon Street, joined as always by our producer behind the glass, Mr. Brandt. And today we have a great guest joining us, Mr. Bill Fountain. Bill is running for candidate. Bill is running for the CMS School Board. He is a retired lieutenant colonel, combat fighter pilot, defense planner, retired high school teacher, math, aviation, aeronautical, science, and economics, a volunteer, search and rescue pilot for the North Carolina Civil Air Patrol, regularly speaks at the CMS School Board meetings, and he also holds a master's degree in business management and bachelor's degree in math. Bill is running on the platform to remove wokeism from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system, and I'm very pleased to have him here. Bill, so glad to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. I mean, that's a tall order to remove wokeism. It's more of trying to arrest the invasion that's going on in the schools.
Absolutely.
It's something that I just feel like a calling. I had to do this, and that's the reason I've been that passion to share that with the school board members. Even though they do pay attention, and they seem to be pretty nice folks, but the platform that they are trying to push through our schools, I'm really reluctant to, because I think it's really corrupting some of the morals that's what's going on in the school. And I found that some people said, well, what is woke? Which is a reasonable question.
That's right.
And I'm looking at it as more like it's disguised as like a social justice to try to remedy past racial prejudice.
That's right.
And sometimes when they do that, to justify that, they will alter some of the history to make sure that it supports that type of thinking. Well, when you go back to, because I'm of my age, I was back in around the time with Martin Luther King, and when President Johnson was president, and the things that they put into the government at those times, particularly the welfare program, and even people who were saying, hey, don't do this because it's going to cause fathers to leave their homes. Right. And so unfortunately the people who got hit the most was the black population. That's and right. It's really sad that happened, and I kind of feel like that's kind of that same thing that's going on again, but except I don't know their intentions, because I guess when you look at we don't know anybody's intention, but you can see, I guess, what is it Jesus used to say, the fruit will tell you how well the tree is doing.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's right.
Well,
I know the intention. It may not be one individual or a person's intentions, but I mean, ultimately it's a spiritual intention, I believe, and
yes.
It's an attack on the family, to your point,
yeah.
and disrupting the family unit, which is the domestic church, and from there, all civilization crumbles, and I think we're seeing that.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Substantially. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. What led to your path of having this interest? I know you weren't originally from the Charlotte area. You came down. I guess family brought you down, and then you had some interest there. Tell a little bit about that.
We had. I had spent 20 years in the Air Force, flying fighters and in combat and all that, and we were at the Pentagon, and came time that I had an opportunity to retire, because they were going to send me to Korea, and I said, I'm not going to have my kids going to high school in Korea. So I got a job there in Maryland, and I spent 20 years there. And then my mom was dying in Florida, and I was going to get one of these jobs where I could go down there and actually work. But unfortunately, she died, and I had my mindset is already set for retiring. And we had our oldest daughter was here in Huntersville, So we said, let's go ahead and go down there. So we found a nice place up here in Cornelius, and not soon after that, I got the I guess I don't know what they call it, the bug, but just like somebody's pushing you in the behind, so you got to go do this. So I started getting involved in helping the youth through the Civil Air Patrol.
Okay.
Either as a aviation. I'll talk to them a little bit about aviation, also the aerospace history of aerospace. And I started actually doing orientation flights with them.
Did that happen to be at North Mecklenburg High School?
No, this was at the Civil Air Patrol. The unit I was flying out of is in Statesville.
Okay.
That we do have one in Concord, and we have one in Charlotte.
Okay.
And so the folks in Statesville was it's not too far. Well, it's not. It's a little ways away, but I chose to join that squadron, and that got me going down this path of being with the youth.
Okay. And
that came along, and I got this. I don't know what happened, but good Lord was just saying, "Hey, you need to be a school teacher." I kept hearing them that we need math teachers, and that's where I got my degree in. Was bachelor's degree was in math, and I said, "Well, I'm going to try it." So I went through UNCC, and that started me on a path for about 10 years teaching.
Wow.
So.
And then kind of get you involved with the schools, and then I guess you had your ear to the ground and kind of hear the murmurings and trouble coming.
Right, because you started hearing, as soon as the COVID hit, I said, you know what, I think it's I've got enough time, and I've already got 1, 2, 3, retirement, so why don't we just retire? And then as soon as that happened, I saw what was going on in the public schools. Mm-hmm. And I said, I've got to do something. I got to speak about this. So I started speaking, and then that essentially led to the idea that, hey, I see the corruption that was going on. Now, I don't mean illegal type stuff. I meant the corruption of the morals and the spiritual realm that from my observation, that was what was happening. And I was also reading that was also happening. It wasn't just my observations. There were other people. And I went to a board meeting, I think it was in June of 21, and I couldn't believe the number of parents that were upset about masks and all the impositions that the school was doing to the parents. And that just, I said, hey, I need to look more and more into this. So, it got me on that path. And
so you said you were doing some speaking. Was that at school level, or did you go directly to the school board meeting?
Oh, I went to the school board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, where you had the 9 members there, and a couple of the superintendents there, and I would regularly speak there. They only allow once a month that you're allowed to speak, and so ever since I don't know, it was either June or July of 21, I've been speaking to all of them except for 1 month when I had COVID. So. And then, so I've been.
How much time do they give you each time?
Well, you get 2 minutes.
2 minutes. You got to have it nice packed up tight, don't you? It's like a nice packed up chute, really nice and tight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do. In addition to that, I go to the Board of Commissioners, which meets on an alternate Tuesday evening, and it's they sit in the same building. They're in the Charlotte City Government Center.
Okay.
And I talk about the same thing about what I see of the dangers of woke and what it's is doing to our the people, because I think it's divisiveness,
Oh, sure.
And
they say it's bringing people together by being aware of this, but in essence, it's really
I think
dividing.
it's the opposite. Exactly, and so I had
it's
to
putting a
speak.
spotlight on it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, out of those times you've been down there, so there's a group of 9. Out of those 9, I mean, how many do you think are starting to scratch their heads and maybe think, maybe he's onto something here?
Well, I don't know what I don't want to say what they're thinking.
Sure.
But I know, in looking at the votes in the past,
okay.
There's one gentleman on the board, and the rest are 8. And from my observation, is that the women are seen to be going toward the more of the liberal type of woke thinking.
Sure.
And when you start looking at the failures of the school board over the several years, it's very apparent that the one gentleman seems to be more traditional thinking. Let's have manageable goal or objectives for the superintendent and things like that, which is a whole list of things that I think they've steered off the wrong way, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, it got me thinking. I know we hear about woke all the time, wokeness, and so many different terms go along with that. What are some, to those out there maybe are, not that familiar? I mean, you may have not heard the term woke. I mean, I looked up before we got here. I just wanted to get a little history on the term woke itself.
Yeah.
The past simple of wake, or awake. In the modern sense, the meaning of the word has changed a lot, and in 2017, the new meaning of the word woke was officially added to the dictionary. But if it really traces back to the 1960s, specifically 1962, there was a New York Times Magazine article. It was entitled, If You're Woke, You Dig It." And so this was basically described as an appropriation of African-American vernacular English. So young persons in the 50s and 60s that were up to date with the beat generation.
Right.
So it was kind of like this cutting edge, this nouveau. Bill, I hate to say it, but Brant just waved me down. We're run out of time, but we're going to continue this because we've got 4 more segments coming on this. But if people, just hearing about it, we got Bill Fountain. He's running for CMS School Board. If they wanted to find out more about you, what would be the best place they could look you up?
Well, take it www.electbillfountain.com. That's my website.
Awesome. Well, Bill, it is great, and I look forward to our next conversation. You have a blessed day.
Thank you.
God bless.
Hello, Carolina Catholic Media family. This fall brings more new programs and ideas to grow your Carolina Catholic Media apostolate. You'll find all access to our local programs on air, online, and on demand, with nearly 1,000 audio podcasts and YouTube videos available in our vast library. You'll hear more local parish, school, and ministry news, plus big events being held throughout the fall. Be sure to ask about reserving a Carolina Catholic live broadcast for your event. We encourage you to get involved, come join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a one-time donation, a monthly pledge, a business sponsorship, or perhaps becoming a program underwriter. Every dollar supports our evangelization mission to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in the Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate. May God bless you abundantly.
The St. Gabriel Men's Club is pleased to announce the return of their annual Oyster Roast and Music Jam. The date is Saturday, October 22nd, immediately following the 5 p.m. Mass. You can order your tickets today at stgabrielmens.club. All proceeds from the October 22nd Oyster Roast and Music Jam will benefit ministries supported by the St. Gabriel Men's Club.
And welcome back once again to the Carolina Catholic Media Network Spotlight. My name is Jason Murphy, also host of the Obligation Radio Show, airing on Fridays at 5 p.m. We're coming to you from the Carolina Catholic Media Network studio on North Tryon Street, and we are picking up with a conversation with Bill Fountain. Bill is running for CMS School Board. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, combat fighter pilot, defense planner, and a staunch opponent to wokeism. So Bill and I were speaking in our last episode about kind of the history of the term woke, and it sort of derived from the 1960s. Kind of those who were on board with some of the more modern and novel ideas of society and liberalism. And, in the 1960s, we saw, just such a change in our society, and not just in our society, but we also saw it in our church, invasion of liberalism, a change to the mass, and obviously on our show, The Obligation, we've talked ad nauseum about the effects of all of the changes that took place in the 1960s and are continuing to take place. But that being said, we've talked about the attack on the family, which has a direct effect on the the domestic church, that is the family, the domestic church, and what we form in our homes goes out into society, and then we go into our churches, we go into our workplaces, and we bring that. So, Bill, thanks again for joining us.
Oh, certainly, my pleasure. You're speaking about the 1960s. Of course, that was. I got in the Air Force in 1965, so we lived. I lived through all of that time frame. I actually had a tour in Vietnam in 67, 68, and then went back in 1972. And all of this was. You're exactly right. I mean, it was. You couldn't believe the change, from what it was the early 60s and then in the 50s. It was just radical. I mean,
yes.
I couldn't believe it. And I get that same feeling that's just what's going on today, and particularly in the school systems, which is scary. That because if you look at what the woke idea, of trying to get back to the I guess remedy the racial prejudices over the time. It's almost there. It's like a social justice type of thing, but they want to erase the social norms.
That's right.
that we have. In other words, the morals and virtues, they want to kind of like sweep that away. And nowadays, you're starting to see where people they won't have pity on the mugged, but they'll have pity on the mugger.
Absolutely.
And or on the family of the murdered, but on to the murder. And I see that's translated right into the schools, because what the schools are doing now is that they say, well, we can't discipline little Johnny because he may have had a difficult childhood because of some other reason. And there was a teacher was telling me that she sent out a student out of the room who was misbehaving, and the child went to the counselor, and the teacher went back to teaching her class, and then later on, the student comes back, and the disruptive student comes back in with a lollipop in the child's mouth. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that the counselor was reinforcing the bad behavior of the child, because she was the child. I don't know whether she or he, but it was rewarded because of that behavior.
That's right.
It tells the teacher that the counselor and the administration doesn't care about me trying to manage a reasonable classroom. Okay, and then the other things, it sends the signal to the other students that, hey, bad behavior is okay.
Yeah.
And then for the people who are, let's say, the children that are orderly. And if this was a bully that went out of the room and came back and with no correction, that makes them afraid. Yeah. So maybe they start skipping school. Maybe they tell their moms that
you're a bad guy. Yeah.
Exactly. So they and that may be one of the reasons we're seeing high absentee rates, because it's well, anyway, that's
no, it's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true, and that this just exhibits it's a microcosm in the school system of what's going on out in society.
Yeah.
And if we don't raise our kids, in our homes, primarily in our homes with, good, strong, spiritual, moral, ethical foundations,
right.
Society's out there, and our government and the school systems, they'll raise them. And I don't think it's how we want them being raised.
Well, you're exactly, because you look at a lot of this same notion is going in with these district attorneys that are letting criminals out, and they're not even persecuted.
Well, it's the same principle.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's the same principle,
That's right.
And I think you look at it in a little bit depth to it. It's not for the well-being of the person. It's more of looks like it's more to disrupt our society, and which is it's sad. But it seems to be the fruits of what they're doing. I don't know their intentions, but the actions seem to speak pretty loud of what their ideas are.
That's right.
And which are contrary to social behavior. And that's we're a social people.
Yes.
I mean that's God raised us that way. So
Well, I don't know how social we are anymore, and you know,
yeah.
I was
Well,
listening to a show the other day, and they were just talking about since the pandemic, people are getting back out, they're going to the movies, but people have forgotten what how you're supposed to act
Yeah.
when you go to the movies.
Right.
They're forgetting that you can't just have your private conversation. You're not in your home watching Netflix.
That's
You're in a
right.
theater, and there may be
Yeah.
100 other people there, and you can't just check your messages because it's a dark place, and when you have your phone on, it's
Right.
lit.
Yeah.
And so many other things. Even it comes to just conversations. People will have difficulty just having normal conversations, looking people in the eye, especially the youth.
Yeah.
The youth can't look you in the eye for some reason. I guess they're so used to their electronics, and there's just not a lot of personal conversation, relationship. It's all social media
Yeah.
through electronics, and so they lose that. And this just kind of exacerbates ongoing how society is losing this ability to communicate, this ability to have structure, and even a step further to your point of the enforcing bad behavior. You've got those who enforce the laws who are being placed as the bad people in
That's
society.
right,
Like
that's right.
you were a bad
Yeah.
teacher enforcing the rules,
Right.
and now the police and our law enforcement are
Right.
pegged as the bad in society.
Right.
So who wants to go and join
Yeah,
that and
yeah.
be there? And now that has become a problem because crime is rampant. And I know that I made a call to 911. It wasn't a dire emergency, but
Right.
it was an issue that I felt
Yeah.
needed to be called, and then I sat on hold for over 7 minutes
Wow.
until I hung up and just decided, I'm just going to have to handle this myself.
Yeah.
I spoke to a friend down in New Orleans, Louisiana. He said they are on a 2.5-hour wait for 911 emergency services. So when you have no fear, so when a criminal has no fear or a child has no fear,
Right.
on top of that there is no consequence. That's chaos.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
chaos.
Yeah, as you're speaking about some of those things, I was thinking more is that, we're turning into ourselves rather than, because I think God wants us to be out, to be out and caring about other people, and when you're having that focus outside of yourself,
That's right.
I think the world is going to be a better place doing that, but. With the the iPhones and the things that they're doing, like we were mentioning, it's turning people into themselves. They're looking more
sure.
about what's going on with me rather than are you comfortable?
Well, just the exteriors. That's
Right.
we're speaking of interiors. But if you look at kids as a whole, even from the exterior, what are they doing? They're holding these devices up
Right,
to
yeah.
themselves, and either they're taking pictures of themselves,
Right.
or selfies and all this,
Right.
that, and the other, or they're zooming and they're looking at themselves in a
Right.
zoom. So they're so used to looking at themselves, they become consumed with themselves.
Yeah.
And the more you look into yourself, obviously, like you said, we're looking away from God and away from what we are called to be.
Yeah, because
It's scary.
that's one of the things that I try to practice is when, like in the morning or particularly when I get outside, because I run sprints for an old guy,
Oh,
which
hey,
is
I like
pretty
that.
good.
Awesome.
I do
That's great.
3 times a week. But when I got there out there in nature, you just look at it and just because you absorb all the things that you feel the love that God has for us with all these beautiful trees and the sun. Well, sometimes it's raining and whatever, but still, it's all things that are being blessings for us, and I don't think that's a message we ought to be saying in the schools because we need to get that reinforced that hey, virtues and caring of others is, and it's a pendulum, a big pendulum swing to get over to that type of thinking.
Yeah.
And we used to have that when I was a kid, but I've seen all these changes like we were talking about in the 60s and 70s where it's different. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a child of the '70s, so I think things were nice and mellow.
Yeah.
not to make a joke there. They were pretty mellow in the '70s, and
right.
we'd kind of eased into that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just seemed like, from my perspective, not having lived through the '50s or the '60s, it seemed like it was such a new kind of mode of thinking, especially in the church. It was just new. The church was saying, we're going to do this. We're making these changes. And the faithful were there, and they said, okay, well, that's the church saying it. So I
Yeah.
guess we go along with it. And
Well,
same with society.
Yeah, because my wife is a cradle Catholic, and I was not that way. But as a cradle Catholic, she was just is like, what happened to the church? Like you were saying during the as soon as the Vatican II and they changed the mass.
Yes.
It was like, and granted, a lot of people left because they weren't comfortable with that.
Right.
But she had it true to the heart that this is God's church, and so but it was a rough time for her to deal with that. Even we were, I guess, when we first started dating, all that was going on. It was it was hard for people to do that that radical change.
Whereas now I feel like we've lived through the experiment, so it's a
Right.
different time. Now we have, I always call it the holy science. I'm a boxer. I box, so they
Okay.
talk about the sweet science
Yeah.
of boxing. So I like to talk about the sweet holy science of the past 60 years to take and look at and say, okay, well, here's what we did, here's what happened, and here's where we are.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there's many that could make an argument and say we're in a better place.
Right.
That's just me.
Yeah.
I mean, we hope for a better place. We know that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church.
Right.
So we certainly are not saying there's no hope, just like we're not saying there's no hope with society.
Right.
As long as we have the light of faith, there's always hope. But I think we're in a different place, and I think there are more opponents that aren't going to go along with it. Voices like yourself, fighting this woke mentality, looking at the kids and hoping so we can make that change. I think we're coming up on time again, but some final thoughts here, on getting us righting this ship back up.
Well, I think Martin Luther King, and I remember his speeches talking about the way of character. And that I think touched everybody. It didn't make any difference whether you're black or white or brown, because when he hit that thing about character, that is a Christian message, and that's what we should be, focusing on right now, is to building that character, which entails virtues, all right, and caring about others, and that's what character is.
That's right.
So.
Once again, Bill, thanks again. We're, Bill Fountain, running for CMS School Board, and if folks out there want to find more about you, they can find you at
www.electbillfountain.com.
Check him out. Bill, pleasure again. We will pick this conversation up very soon.
The St. Gabriel Men's Club is pleased to announce the return of their annual Oyster Roast and Music Jam. The date is Saturday, October 22nd, immediately following the 5 p.m. Mass. You can order your tickets today at stgabrielmens.club. All proceeds from the October 22nd Oyster Roast and Music Jam will benefit ministries supported by the St. Gabriel Men's Club.
Hello, Carolina Catholic Media family. This fall brings more new programs and ideas to grow your Carolina Catholic Media apostolate. You'll find all access to our local programs on air, online, and on demand, with nearly 1,000 audio podcasts and YouTube videos available in our vast library. You'll hear more local parish, school, and ministry news, plus big events being held throughout the fall. Be sure to ask about reserving a Carolina Catholic live broadcast for your event. We encourage you to get involved, come join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a one-time donation, a monthly pledge, a business sponsorship, or perhaps becoming a program underwriter. Every dollar supports our evangelization mission to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in the Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate. May God bless you abundantly.
Manipulated, but they altered some of the history that's associated with that, about, let's say, the blacks' history, about the racial prejudice, etc. They lose sight of the fact of what Martin Luther King was saying about character, right. Because now they're trying to tell the student is that because you are a victim of past this, and so when somebody becomes a victim, that sometimes charges someone to think about revenge,
Yes.
or to think about something about, hey, that you just, in a way, you reduce that person's self-esteem, because they, people want to have purpose. They want to feel like they're loved. And then when you tell them that, they're telling them that no, you're not loved, you're abused, etc. Right. And so that sets a mindset which is counter to the well-being of that child. And if you tell that, well, because of this past abuse, we're going to make you entitled to something. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get a special treatment. And what does that do? That robs them of their will, of the will to improve. Because even though they may think that this equity is a great thing, mm-hmm. I see it is really undermining the child's personhood, because they're not, they don't have that self-reliance. And when you tell them that they may not have the will to go at how to improve, because people need purpose. Yeah. I mean, God gave us, we're all unique, we're all different, and we each have a purpose in life. And if you start robbing that of a person, you've taken their whole life away from them, and it's sad. Or you may send them down a path that is going to go to ruin, and it's really sad that this is happening. That's one of the reasons why I got the impulse to start doing this, because I think it's wrong, and somehow we need to take what the schools have been doing, they call social emotional learning, and it is spinning their will away from them, the students, that is, and that we need to get back in there saying, hey, you need to have virtues, you need to be truthful, and caring, and the things that we are used to in the way of the church about the virtues, and that right there is going to help, I think, give a willpower to these people to say, hey, God gave me a purpose here, and I am going to work for that. I don't know what it is.
Right.
I mean, fortunately, when I was a kid in high school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. But there are a lot of people that I've taught in my years in teaching. They didn't know what to do, but they discovered it at later on. But they had a purpose. They knew there was something out there for them to go after. So.
Yeah. No, that's what popping in my head is just you're limiting these people, limiting them of what their true potential is.
Exactly.
That's in a summary. That's what it is. And there's so many things while you were speaking that really jumped in my head, and going back to the 1960s and the welfare state, which really was a full attack on the black race.
That's right.
Because prior to all of these subsidies and these this talk of inequality and all of these given this government trying to take care of everyone, and saying there's this perceived problem, the blacks had some of the highest marital rates.
Yes, right.
Prior to that,
that's right.
And after the fact, we've just seen obviously a degeneration of that, and not just there in a racial environment, but looking at now, fast forwarding. We're looking at this issue, this gender dysphoria going on with the kids, and this LGBTQ. Yeah. So it's the same thing. It's like you're grooming. They're grooming. There was a special the other day about this just gender dysphoria issue where, those specifically middle-aged men kind of grooming these children. They're saying, "Oh, well, you're depressed," and the reason why you're depressed is because you don't know what your sexuality is,
right? And
don't listen to your parents because they don't love you. They don't love you. They don't understand you, but we understand you. So in a same way, it's almost like the school is saying, "Oh, your parents," because there's a lot of things I've been running across where they're not letting the parents know what's being taught.
That's right.
And some of the the things that are being said at school are not being, and even some going back to some of this gender issues and the transitioning, they're allowing the children to be, well, I want to be called a girl even though I'm a boy, and at school they're going to abide by that, even though the parents are saying, no, this is a girl, and so it's very interesting, but it's such a similarity, and I have to say, man is not that smart.
Right.
Okay, we are not that smart.
Yeah.
There are some people that are smarter than others, but when it comes to the attack and the method, I believe this is a spiritual attack.
Across
the board,
right.
you know?
Because the fruit, going back to the same thing about a diseased tree is going to bear diseased fruit, and that's this whole woke thing is diseased. Like you're saying, and the thing that bothers me the most about this gender transition, etc., is that a child, when you come into the birth, you're born a male or female,
right.
and there are certain expectations that follow along with that. And I think because of the idea, the woke culture of trying to put away any social mores or any norms, they want to destroy that. And what does that happen to a child? You've already messed around with their behavior, all right, but we're saying there's no saying thing about behavior. Now, and before, I've already mentioned that earlier, that they've already destroyed some of their willpower, etc.
Right.
But now this other leg is that when you don't have that's ingrained in you of how you are.
Yeah, don't even know who you are. Yeah,
that's right, and you take that away from them.
Yeah,
It's horrible what they're doing to the kids.
That's despair, and that's why there's such a high suicide rate associated with that.
Right, but you hit the nail because they're justifying this gender transition or gender thinking to the idea that we want to stop bullying. So that way, so the people who are maybe think a little bit different out of their gender, they are the ones who have been bullied. So what we do, we celebrate them. We celebrate this unusual type of thing that these kids that may be that way, and then so you end up doing that. And then the other part is that when you essentially take their feet from underneath them, where they have the ability, the stability, and when they start doing this other things about the chemicals and all that other stuff, it's a real shame, and it's you may have destroyed a child's whole life, in front of them.
It's a destruction of the human person. I mean, it really
it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a real mess. I pulled up an article. I was, looking, I found an article, Woke Schooling, a Toolkit for Concerned Parents. And this is put together by the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research. They're a leading free market think tank. Mm-hmm. And just trying to, get a little bit more information. I mean, we've hit on several of the issue, the items that would fall under quote unquote wokeness. And I just want to toss some out there and then, let you kind of respond. So, I mean, achievement gap, basically.
Right, because if you look at the achievement gap, if you look at the low-performing schools, and they are the same schools that have a high absentee rate, and they're the same schools that have a high black and brown population. So you say, what's going on in there? Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is because there's no motivation. Yeah. I mean, if you already have started telling the kids that they are victims or et cetera, then that's going to be a downhill for them. So that's
it's that victimhood. Yeah, it's that putting ceiling, that limiting them. This is only what you're able to do because you are this or you are that.
Exactly.
And instead of being their goal is inclusiveness, but unfortunately that is not the effect.
No, you're exactly. So. But it's something that sells. The inclusiveness and diversity. That's right. That all sells. Yeah. And I know I'm coming across totally against all that. And so I'm obviously a bad guy. But I think the truth is, I know the truth is on my side. It's because it is a religious, and we are a religious war. It's an evil thing that's going into, that's permeating into our culture. Cancer metastasizing. So.
Bill Fountain, running for CMS School Board. Pleasure speaking with you again. We are going to pick this one up on our next episode. Bill, thanks for joining us. And once again, if they want to find out more about you and your platform.
Yeah, it's www.electbillfountain.com. Thank you.
There you go.
Hello, Carolina Catholic Media family. This fall brings more new programs and ideas to grow your Carolina Catholic Media apostolate. You'll find all access to our local programs on air, online, and on demand, with nearly 1,000 audio podcasts and YouTube videos available in our vast library. You'll hear more local parish, school, and ministry news, plus big events being held throughout the fall. Be sure to ask about reserving a Carolina Catholic live broadcast for your event. We encourage you to get involved, come join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a one-time donation, a monthly pledge, a business sponsorship, or perhaps becoming a program underwriter. Every dollar supports our evangelization mission to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in the Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate. May God bless you abundantly.
The St. Gabriel Men's Club is pleased to announce the return of their annual Oyster Roast and Music Jam. The date is Saturday, October 22nd, immediately following the 5 p.m. Mass. You can order your tickets today at stgabrielmens.club. All proceeds from the October 22nd Oyster Roast and Music Jam will benefit ministries supported by the St. Gabriel Men's Club.
Welcome back to the Carolina Catholic Media Network Spotlight. My name is Jason Murphy, your host of The Obligation on Fridays at 5 p.m. We're coming to you from the Carolina Catholic Media Network studio on North Tryon Street in Charlotte. And it's my pleasure to once again sit down with Bill Fountain. Bill is running for the CMS School Board. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, combat fighter pilot. He's a retired high school teacher, math, aviation, aeronautical science, and economics, and so much more. Bill, thanks again for joining us. How are you doing today?
No, I'm doing fine. I appreciate the opportunity to speak again.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a great series so far. We're really getting into some stuff here, making some connections, kind of tying in, what's going on in our school, along with what's going on with society, what's going on with our church. And obviously the undercurrent there is a spiritual problem. I think we've put our finger on it. There's a spiritual issue going on.
Yeah, I agree, because you can almost feel the evil sometimes that's going on in some of these different things. But sometimes when we talk about particularly the sexual type of things that are the kids are being done, one of the other things about that is there are pornographic books that were required reading, and here even the parents don't get are not aware of this. And an example happened at one of the high schools up in Huntersville, in Cornelius, where the parents complained about this ninth grade student having to read a book they call "The Girl That Fell from the Sky," and in that it has some pretty explicit sexual scenes in there. And this is for ninth graders, which it didn't have required for that. And the whole thought was that, well, this is a good book for social justice. Where obviously To Kill a Mockingbird would have been a great book for social justice. Well, anyway, the parents complained about this to the principal at the high school, and that was not satisfactory. They didn't get it. They said, "Oh, this book has been approved by CMS," which means the school board must have been approved it. And then finally, somehow, they also went to the school board and read the father read the explicit scenes from the book to the school board. I was there because I spoke that same night, and a guy named Officer Tatum, who has a show in Arizona. Suppose he's got like 3 million followers. Well, it so happens is that what I'm told by one of the board members, that book has been pulled because they listened to the parent, not realizing that there may have been 3 million followers, pick that thing up. So I don't know how much they were listening, or was it public pressure that was going on. But at least the book was changed. So you get the reading in there, and then you got the things that they also talk about, the gender identity, trying to make people persuade them, well, maybe I am kind of that way. And of course, as a child, you're just learning. and all you need to do is try to do some of these off ramps. No, you want to steer them to, to righteousness. You want to follow God's will and to do, and have a purpose. But when you steer these things to these off ramps, that is that's danger. Because who knows where these kids are going to end up going with that. So.
Yeah, it's got to be really frustrating and really sad, disheartening. Thanks be to God, I'm able to send my kids to Catholic schools here in the Diocese of Charlotte. However, I'm very, very involved. My wife and I are both very involved, and I've decided I even joined the diocesan school board. So I felt like, right now we have 5 kids in Catholic schools, and probably in another year, 2 years, we'll have 6 kids in Catholic school. We'll have all 6 at one time. And again, I have the luxury of sending my kids to a private, especially Catholic school. I cannot imagine the hardship, the heartache that folks would be going through if they had no choice.
Yes.
Legally, you have to send your kids to the school. And if you can't financially send your kids to a private school, let alone a Christian school or Catholic school, what a disaster! That would disrupt your whole family. If you're trying to raise your kids in a moral and upright home, and yet you open the door to the devil's den each time they get on the school bus.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a travesty. It's a real mess.
And that's one of the reasons I think too that I think people are trying to look at this voucher idea, where you can help some of these poor families to be able to afford to be able to get into some of these different schools, and I think that's something that's ought to be done. And of course homeschooling is definitely an option. And I've seen these ideas of these pod. I guess I don't know that much about it, but it's like a pod school where a community of people can get together and teach their children, either maybe getting someone from the outside to help them or whatever. But at least the parents have more knowledge of what is going on. And obviously, if they have that knowledge, they're putting that together, then they have approval of that.
That's right.
Which is not. I don't see that.
The homeschool co-ops.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And that I think that's something that because I know that my wife, homeschooled our oldest daughter, and my daughter. My oldest daughter is it homeschooled, a lot of her children. So it's.
Again, that's a luxury, right?
Yes.
If you have both parents or a single parent who has to work, there's no way they can homeschool.
Yeah, you're right.
And what do? You have society, taking your kids and just running them, raising them as their own, as little, government drones, feeding them with this dogma of society, and it's just it's ruining society, it's ruining homes, it's ruining everything about what's going on. So I don't know, but I've seen some of the videos where you have some of the folks, the parents, and they're livid, and because they have no choice, they can't just keep the kids at home. They can't. They have to work. They don't have the resources to maybe to send to private schools. They can't do the homeschooling, and they're just stuck.
Exactly. I was at a they call it a town hall meeting. It was at a high school because the high school had several guns picked up at it, and this was last November, I think it was, and there were several parents. It didn't make any difference about the race.
I think that would be any high school USA at this point.
Right. Okay. Any high school in USA. But anyway, they were the parents were upset. Even the teacher was upset. Says, "Hey, we got the same troublemakers making the same, doing the same thing over and over again." And I remember this one courageous black lady stood up. She says, "You know what? I took my son out of this school because he was a troublemaker, and I love him, but I also love my fellow citizens." And so she did what was best for him and best for the school to take him out of that particular school. I don't know what happened after that, but at least that, to me, that was a courageous thing that she did, because she knew that it was the system is not supporting her, and it's obviously not supporting these other people. And at that same meeting, unfortunately, some of the board members actually demeaned the parents for speaking out against these about not disciplined and troublemakers. And that's not the only occurrence. It's where some principals saying, "Hey, we know better what's for your daughter and your son than you do." And that's
I heard something on the news several weeks ago, and it was a principal or an administrator of a public school system at some point, somewhere, and said, parents just need to let go of the idea of their children because they're our children, and that is a really scary statement. But that's the mentality, isn't it?
Unfortunately, is because obviously the teachers. The parents are the first educators, and they're the one who cares the most about the child, and that's where and schools need to acknowledge that and to support that, and that's the reason I think the ideas of community schools where you get a little bit more, you get more involvement. I know the CMS school system is a huge system, 180 schools. I think it's like 140,000 students.
Wow.
So it's big. And I know when I was in the business world as a program manager, and that you need to have the smaller little units that you have where you have better control of that. You can have more responsiveness with your teachers and your parents. I think it'll be a lot better idea. But I think the school system is definitely going to fight being broken up maybe into 6 different units that could be that could be able to have a little bit more autonomy and closer to the community and closer to the parents, where they'll have a lot more say so in.
So besides voting for Bill Fountain on November 8th, what are some practical tips for parents? If parents are witnessing, this type of activity, which we know it's out there, and I'm sure there's some folks out there listening who have their kids in public schools. What can they do?
Well, one of the first things is that the example that was set by the parent up at the high school up in the Cornelius, where they went up there and they spoke at the CMS school board, and I've seen other parents do that, and I think the pressure, particularly on the mask mandates, was pretty high. Because I remember listening to a lot of those of a lot of parents. I mean, there was like one time I think it was like 60 or 80 speakers one evening, and it took forever, but it was still a lot of them were complaining about masks, and I think that's one way to show your voice, is really to get involved, and the other thing is hey, if you have the means to do it, homeschool, send them to a private school, and hopefully we can get our legislatures one day to be able to pass a voucher bill, a school voucher, where you'll give these parents a lot more leeway, and I think you'll start seeing these low-performing schools change around when they start losing students, which they've already been doing there. So
November 8th's coming up.
Yes,
Bill Fountain. If the folks want to find out more about you,
www.electbillfountain.com. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
The St. Gabriel Men's Club is pleased to announce the return of their annual Oyster Roast and Music Jam. The date is Saturday, October 22nd, immediately following the 5 p.m. Mass. You can order your tickets today at stgabrielmens.club. All proceeds from the October 22nd Oyster Roast and Music Jam will benefit ministries supported by the St. Gabriel Men's Club.
Hello, Carolina Catholic Media family. This fall brings more new programs and ideas to grow your Carolina Catholic Media apostolate. You'll find all access to our local programs on air, online, and on demand, with nearly 1,000 audio podcasts and YouTube videos available in our vast library. You'll hear more local parish, school, and ministry news, plus big events being held throughout the fall. Be sure to ask about reserving a Carolina Catholic live broadcast for your event. We encourage you to get involved, come join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a one-time donation, a monthly pledge, a business sponsorship, or perhaps becoming a program underwriter. Every dollar supports our evangelization mission to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in the Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate. May God bless you abundantly.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the Carolina Catholic Media Network Spotlight. Today I'm sitting down with retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Bill Fountain. Bill is running for CMS School Board. We have been covering a lot of ground, talking about the wokeism infiltrating our school system. We were just talking about, options and, practical advice for those who, may not have a choice to remove their kids from the public school.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about homeschooling, as an option. Of course, there has to be certain resources there available.
Exactly, yeah.
We've talked about the numbers of enrollment have dropped greatly in public schools because people are fed up. And on the other side of that coin, we've seen a huge increase, over 20% increase since the pandemic in the Catholic school system.
Mm-hmm.
The Catholic school system, was able to go back, removing the mask that were required and just, going back when public schools and government entities were still hanging on to that pandemic.
Yes.
The Catholic schools were able, and I don't think many people are going to cross back over that bridge. We're seeing folks, and one great blessing of it is when I recently spoke to Dr. Greg Monroe at the Knights game when we had the 50th anniversary. We mentioned that we're starting to see a lot of the folks who've come over from the public school system and may not have even been Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
They're starting to show up around the church.
Yeah.
They're starting to see that, okay, we see something here. There is something here. There's truth here, and that's what we're called to. We're called to evangelize, right. and thanks be to God, that happened. Through all the negative and all the bad things of the pandemic, there is light there, and
Mm-hmm.
and that light has been shown on a lot of things. We've seen the importance of faith and also light shine on some pretty ugly things, right, Bill?
Oh yes, particularly unfortunately, because when they, I've mentioned on the earlier programs that when you pull the will from a child, in a way, and they lose their self-esteem by some of their thinkings that's going on in the schools. That's something that the parent needs to say, regardless of your race, regardless that you should be proud of what God gave you, and this is God gave us the ability to be able to think and to be able to observe the world and to be able to to praise Him, and we should I think parents, if they started looking at granted they may be stuck in the public school system, but if they could reinforce virtues into their children, which are being subtracted from or undermined, they're in the schools, then I think that's something that at least you can. If you're being starved on this, say maybe you need to feed them the virtues and the things about self-reliance that you should be proud to be whatever you are. Okay, because God made you that way. I mean, He made you unique and gave you a unique purpose, and we ought to cherish that and try to build on that. And that's what we should be doing, because I think some people want to just say, well, let's just be silent about it and not do anything, or to be, which I think some of the things they're doing in the schools is fighting, spreading lies or false impressions about the different prejudices or over history, and therefore they are actually making I think things anti.
That's
because
right.
one of the things I read recently was that the equity training that goes on, in other words, trying to get the fairness back in,
Right.
is that what they, in a way, they're saying that the work ethic is a white construct. In other words, that only white people think that. So, and that is just absurd, is that
That's right.
everybody ought to have a work ethic, because that's how they're going to be able to improve themselves and to take care of their families and et cetera. Because that's unfortunately, that's I've seen that's one of the things that's going on. And if you And if you get into this racism idea and this, that, well, that's what the white people do, that's what the black people do, that's divisiveness. And we're called for unity. We're a social people. We're supposed to be close, trying to help each other out. And that's one of the things I think parents need to do. If they can't find vouchers, or if they can't go homeschool and they're stuck with this with the public schools, and the public schools ought to be havens of structure and order. That's what they were designed to be, but we're taking the underpinnings of that away from the child. We're messing up their sexuality, so they don't know from a biological standpoint of view. That messes them over there. We take their will and their self-esteem out of the way, and then the next thing is we set no standards for behavior. Mm-hmm. All of those things leaves a child wandering, and a parent's. It's hard, particularly if you're a single parent and you don't have the ability to be able to be at home when the child comes home from school. It just have to get, I guess, more relatives and more of the larger family to be able to the community
the village mentality,
start helping in that, and that's a character that we need to look at, and go back again to what Martin Luther King talked. It was talking. It's more about character, and if we can build character into our children, I think we're going to have rewards that we'll be very, very pleased with.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think we all inherently desire order and structure, and because it eventually just leads to chaos. Children want structure. They like routine. Right. They're most happiest when things are structured and they know. Let's just start from the very beginning. I mean, the happiness of a child is most realized when the structure of a family is in place.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Because that's the bedrock.
Yeah.
You can't build anything really. I mean, of course, I don't want to say anybody who comes from a broken home. I came from a broken home. Here I am. Here I still stand. But I certainly. Don't desire that on anyone who's been through a broken home, because the years of misery that I went through, and then the sufferings and things that come along with divorce and broken homes, that just if you don't have to go that route, it's better not to. But my point being, that structure, it starts with the family unit. And inside of that family unit, then a time for going to bed, a time for waking up, a time when lunch is, a time please God, when prayer is said, and all those things. You just see a more fluidity of a family unit, and in the constraints of just order.
Right.
God is order. If we look at the order of our world, of time and space, and the sun and the rising. I spoke about this on my show the other day. Just God is of order.
Yeah.
He does leave it to us to have free will, and I think we have our way with free will.
Yeah.
But in the span of time and creation, there is certainly beautiful order within it, and we are created by God, so it's inherently within us. And if they can't have it in their home and they don't have it at school, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Right. In fact, when you're speaking about the order, I had the privilege to be I don't call it a privilege, but anyway, I went to 5 different high schools and in 3 different countries.
Oh wow! And
in my senior year, we were living in England, and in my senior year, and the traffic in England was fairly orderly, but we had our senior class trip was to Rome. And I remember the traffic; it was chaotic. I mean, it was like, and you talked about the fluidity and stuff like that. I was just like this, it was just like a creek where you get all this turbulence in the traffic. It was just amazing, and that's where you could see all the disorder that was going on into that traffic, and you think about that was going into a child's mind when they long for that structure. And they want to have their parents there. They want to have their friends that they're close with. And unfortunately, that's they don't see that in the school.
That's right.
And if you just it's almost like throw me into a whirlpool. And what's going to come out of that? It's
usually not good.
That's right. And it's scary because you're attacking them on so many different ways. Of the structure that we have, because I think the essence of morality, of the wokeism, is the idea of a of social justice, taking away the social norms,
Yeah.
which which leaves you with disorder,
Absolutely.
the divisiveness, and you can't have we can't have a comfortable civilization, and if you go back in history and look at some of the turbulent times that were, for instance. Germany had, in the Weimar Republic, where they went belly up because of the financial and all the things that were required because of the war, and that with all the turbulence they had, then they came in with the dictator, and
right.
and so I don't know how is this all being positioned, but I'm afraid for this.
I think we're all afraid of it. I think you can look at the latest news headline on any station you choose, and there's definitely the ability and the reason to be fearful. Of course, we know we won't be fearful with our Lord. We
Right.
always have that hope, but it is concerning. It's certainly not something we just gonna stick our head in the ground and make the sign of the cross and think everything's gonna be better. God expects us to help save ourselves.
Right.
We have to actively participate in our salvation. Bill, I think we're about to wrap up this 5-part series. It has been a true pleasure. So once again, Bill Fountain, he's running for CMS School Board. He is going to be out there fighting against this wokeism infiltrating our school system.
Amen.
Bill, if folks want to find out more about you and your platform, they can go to
www.electbillfountain.com. Thank you.
November 8th coming up. God bless.
Hello, Carolina Catholic Media family. This fall brings more new programs and ideas to grow your Carolina Catholic Media apostolate. You'll find all access to our local programs on air, online, and on demand, with nearly 1,000 audio podcasts and YouTube videos available in our vast library. You'll hear more local parish, school, and ministry news, plus big events being held throughout the fall. Be sure to ask about reserving a Carolina Catholic live broadcast for your event. We encourage you to get involved, come join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a one-time donation, a monthly pledge, a business sponsorship, or perhaps becoming a program underwriter. Every dollar supports our evangelization mission to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in the Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate. May God bless you abundantly.